and welcome. My name is Tom Lelio. I'm your ultimate jet guide. And on this channel, we pull back the curtain on private aviation to help you buy or sell that private jet with no experience necessary to get started. Today, we're talking the exciting world of aviation insurance. And you may not think that it's super exciting, but could be very super scary if you find yourself in a situation where you need it, but you don't have it. And so to talk about all of this, I've invited the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Matt White is with me today. And Matt is the guy. He's the go-to. He's the company owner of BWI Fly, which is actually where I get my E&O coverage from. His girl Jack is amazing. She's a wonderful broker that's helped me out. And she also helps out. She's the one I recommend to clients when it comes to, hey, I need insurance for my aircraft. Matt is also a YouTuber, so if you're interested in what he's talking about, you can get some more Matt in your life by subscribing to him on YouTube at BWI Fly. I am subscribed to my other channel, but I'll go ahead and give you another sub right there. Matt, sorry if it's a little embarrassing right there, but Matt, welcome to the channel, man.
Thanks for having me, Tom. So excited to talk about everybody's favorite subject in the world, aircraft insurance. I know you guys can't wait to talk about insurance.
Well, it's interesting and fun to talk about when it happens to somebody else. Right. And I think that's what we're going to talk about. It's like seeing an accident on the road, and you just have to like look and see like, wow, what did those people do? So that's kind of what we're going to talk about. We're going to get right into some mistakes, and we're going to gear this primarily towards professionals, towards brokers, people that are involved in aviation, not just owners, because we've already done a podcast for owners, which you can go check out on both my channel and Matt's channel. So today we're pulling back the curtain for brokers when it comes to aviation insurance.
Awesome. Absolutely. Happy to get into it.
I'll let you go. We got 4 mistakes that we're going to talk about in the very beginning. Is that correct?
Yep.
Cool.
Absolutely.
Let's do it.
So the first one is kind of what are the main gotchas that specifically kind of an aircraft sales broker should look out for insurance wise. These are some pretty important points here. But there are a few, major gotchas that I want to kind of go over that you want to be aware of, especially when you're transacting in aircraft. Number one is pilot approval. So if if the buyer is planning to fly the aircraft themselves, especially if it's a turbine or a jet, they may not meet the underwriter's minimum requirements. And I've seen deals fall apart at closing because the owner was assuming they could be approved, and we didn't get a quote until the final hour before the deal was closing, and it's too late, and the deal falls apart. So pilot approval is a big one. We've got to get the pilot approved, and that happens through insurance.
So, okay, pilot approval. So I own a jet in my world. I own a jet. I'm already approved. I have insurance. I went through you. I made sure everything was good to go. But now we need to relocate for closing, or maybe we close, in Florida, and the plane has to be delivered to New York or something like that. If we don't know, if we haven't had these conversations, if we haven't talked to someone like yourself, the person picking up the plane may not be covered.
Right.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, you just said it right there. It's a huge risk. Is this illegal if you don't have insurance on an aircraft? Maybe we should let the brokers know whether or not is insurance required when it comes to aircraft.
Insurance is not legally required, except for 2 or 3 states. I think Minnesota is one of them, but the other 47 states do not legally require insurance. I think they should, but they don't. Right now don't require insurance, so it's not illegal. But on the insurance side, you have your approved pilots, and so this is, you've given your logbook, all the information to your insurance broker. You got approved. You're a named pilot on the policy, and then there's the open pilot warranty, right? So these are other pilots that if they meet the underwriter's minimum qualifications, they can fly. They don't need to be named. The number one reason why aircraft insurance claims get denied is because somebody was flying the airplane and they were either not named on the policy or they didn't meet the open pilot warranty. That's the biggest reason why I see aircraft insurance claims get denied. And it's so easy. It's less of a risk with jets and turbines, more of a risk with your Cessna 172s, 180s. Hey, let my buddy go fly around the pattern, something like that, and then something happens, and then there's no insurance coverage.
Would a bank or a lender require insurance for closing sometimes?
100%. Yep. If the aircraft's financed, they're always going to require insurance. They're going to require that the aircraft is insured up to the whole value of the purchase price, and they're going to want to be named as an additional insurer, as a lien holder on the policy.
And so in this case, we're going to closing. Maybe a buyer thought, yeah, no problem, I can get insurance. But either they didn't get the insurance, or like you said, the guy that they hired to relocate the aircraft doesn't meet the open policy or isn't named on there. And so now we're just kind of stuck.
Right. And this goes back to the expertise as an aircraft broker in guiding your customers when they're buying an aircraft, right? If you know that the deal is going to be financed, we're probably going to want to get insurance involved early. We're going to want to get them listed as a lien holder. We're going to want to get the whole value, et cetera. If you know that the aircraft's going to be ferried, we're going to probably want to get the pilots approved and go through that process. And all that comes down to your expertise and your expertise working with an aircraft insurance broker together to make that deal successful.
Perfect. All right, let's go to number two. What's got you number two?
Gotcha. Number two this is a big one. This is, aircraft sales 101. There probably should be an insurance part of it, but it's misunderstanding how insurance quotes work. Insurance, specifically aircraft insurance carriers, they don't want to see the same aircraft, the same tail number submitted by 5 different insurance brokers. So this is a mental change from like auto insurance. You shop around everywhere, and you're comparing every year, trying to save money. That's the complete opposite of how the approach you want to take in aircraft insurance, because there's like a limited number of underwriters and hundreds of thousands of submissions. And when they get your aircraft and pilot, specifically your tail number, but even your named insured, when they get that from 4 or 5 different brokers, they will shut down and they'll stop quoting it, and they'll start declining it. They'll start ignoring it because they want to see you with, they only want to see it one time, and they want to give it their best effort the one time they do see it. So when an aircraft sales broker refers a client, if they refer a client to like 2 or 3 different brokers, they are actually hurting their customer, because those 2 or 3 brokers are going to start shopping around. Aircraft sales brokers really need to find like one aviation insurance professional and stick to it 100%.
I appreciate that. Now, let me ask you this question: when a aircraft broker is looking for insurance brokers, is it kind of like some specialize in heavy, some specialize in light, some specialize in GA versus business app, or is the industry pretty small that if you're an aviation insurance broker, you probably have places to go for all types of business?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's very specialized. So for example, I have a friend who owns an aircraft insurance agency, and he specializes in insuring Comanches and gyros, like 2 planes, Comanches and gyros. That's it. And he can quote, your 172s, your 180s, and he can do a decent job on those, but he just really likes to specialize in like 2 makes and models. And so you're going to have like your smaller brokers are way more specialized, and your larger brokers, they will have people, if they're a good larger broker, that they will have agents that specialize in different things within that industry, right? Mm-hmm. So I'll have somebody that specializes in jets and turbines, another one, commercial, Part 135 and Part 91. And like we have people at BWI that just specialize in Alaska. We have an office in Alaska, and that's all they do is aircraft in Alaska, because it's a completely different thing.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, it's very unique and specialized. So me saying you got to find one broker that you can trust, but then they all specialize in different things. It's hard, but you definitely don't want to go find 3 or 4 and have them all shopping at the same time. That is a recipe for disaster right there.
Yeah. No, I understand. I appreciate that. Cool. All right. Wow. Moving right along. What gotcha number 3?
Okay. Gotcha number 3, Part 135 usage or future charter plans. This is a big one, especially when you're trying to offset the cost of buying a jet. If one of your buyers thinks that they're going to put the jet on a charter certificate down the line, they should bring that up to you now, right? They need to let you know during the sales process, because Part 135 policies, insurance policies, structured totally different than like Part 91 or pleasure and business or anything like that. It's a completely different type of insurance policy, and you can't change the usage, right? You can't bind a pleasure and business policy or Part 91 policy and then like 6 months later say, hey, we're gonna convert this to allow for 135 use. Like you have to write a whole new policy, and that's a mess. You have to cancel a policy, start a new policy. You're going to get unearned premium back, and it's a mess. It can be done, but you really want to go into the process knowing how you're going to use the jet, get the insurance set up correctly from the get-go. It's so much better than trying to fumble your way through this or changing your mind, later on 6 months after you bought the aircraft.
Now, if they're thinking about it, but it's more just like, I had a buddy that, said I should do this one time, and maybe in like 5, and they're not like super serious, like that's one thing. But like, if you ask them point blank, like, hey, what's the plan? And they're like, oh, I'm probably going to buy it, and then I'm going to put it on a 135. That's a whole different scenario, right?
Totally different. Yeah. Gotcha. Different insurance policy, different underwriting, different questions. Everything's different.
Yeah. It's people, it's not like Airbnb. Jets are not like an Airbnb where you can just kind of throw the same, policy onto, or the same financing or the same whatever. Understanding Part 91, Part 135. It's why working with a professional broker, lenders is super important. Okay, cool. I like it.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question. How many of your customers do you think plan to rent out, or charter out a jet that they purchased? Like, what's the percentage of that?
Of the phone calls that I get and people just shopping, and how many of those actually will bring that up? I'd say probably about 30%. We'll say the reason I'm shopping is because I'm thinking of, doing this thing. But that's a very small number when it comes down to like who actually closes. Like out of my closings, probably 10% of them, like 1 out of 10, end up putting it on a 135. So but it's important, like you said, to have those conversations up front. That way you can guide everybody along the way and not waste time and really educate them of like, okay, are you sure you want to do this?
Right.
Is there a big jump in insurance premiums from a 135 versus a Part 91?
100%. Way more exposure for the insurance companies. Insurance policies are always written on like, how much risk is it, right? How much exposure do they have out there on the policy? And when you have, the aircraft doing different things, especially like a 135 versus a 91, the exposure level increases, and therefore the premium is also going to increase.
Is it like double or triple or 10 times?
I would say it's like 120 to 150% more. And it all depends. It depends on the usage, depends on the routes, where we're flying, how many people, how many passengers, liability, all the value of the aircraft, all that stuff.
So. Yeah. But then, worst case scenario again, you try to do 134.5, right? Yeah. You don't insure correctly, and you saved yourself, 120%, for a couple of years. But now all of a sudden you have a catastrophic loss. Not only do you have the whole value, if you're chartering your plane is at least worth $1 million, but God forbid any lives were impacted, as a result. Then you're just completely sunk, all to save a couple $1,000s, right?
You're putting your whole business, and if you're the business owner, your livelihood in jeopardy, at risk, if you don't have a policy, and if the policy is not written correctly, which is probably the second or third biggest reason why claims are denied in aircraft insurance is the policy is not written correctly, but that's for another day.
Great. I got a couple more gotchas. What else you got, Matt?
Okay. My last one is, lien holder and breach of warranty language. And I see this so many times, probably 200 or 300 times in the last 12 months. But if the aircraft, we talked about this earlier, but if the aircraft is going to be financed, the insurance policy has to reflect that perfectly, right? It's got to have the correct lender name, the endorsements, breach of warranty language. Any little mistakes here can delay funding for the aircraft, and it can leave the lender exposed. So you got to make sure, that's why in the process as professionals, we have to ask these extra questions. You're buying an aircraft. That's why you're the professional buying aircraft, and then you work with a professional who does aircraft insurance. These are the questions we ask. We try and get the information out of, like, from the beginning of the whole process, either buying or selling an airplane or getting insurance. You gotta go through these questions, and a lot of times, aircraft owners, they don't want to answer these questions, and it kind of hinders us from being able to write the policy correctly and do our job. But this is a big one. You got to get the lien holder breach of warranty language correct.
And I think this is the benefit of working with multiple professionals, so that if I have a level of trust with the owner and you have a level of trust, like, we can say, like, hey, listen, you can come back to me and be like, hey, Tom, like, this is the answers I got. I really need you to make sure that these are accurate and it's fleshed out enough, because I want to make sure that he's covered. Now I can go back to the owner and be like, hey, listen, like, I know you might be worried about saying something that's going to impact you negatively or give you higher premiums or something like that. Right. But we need this information, X, Y, and Z, to make sure we fill it out appropriately. And so you can kind of tag team it to make sure at the end of the day, it's at the owner's, the client's best interest. We're not just trying to shop for higher premiums. Like, we see stuff happening.
100%. Totally agree.
Do you mind sharing? And I know we'll come back to kind of explain coverages and gaps in coverage and all that kind of stuff. But do you mind sharing maybe some stories or examples where you've seen these happen in real life, and what was the result of some of these mistakes that people have made?
Yeah, 100%. So a lot of these mistakes or gotchas aren't realized until there's an accident or a claim. And then it's like, oh, we didn't do that. Oh, we didn't add this. Oh, the policy doesn't reflect that. And now it's a big problem, right? And that's the whole reason, like, I get excited about insurance. I know insurance, everybody, seems to hate insurance, but, and I totally understand it. But when, like, we can write something correctly, and then when there is an accident and you have insurance and we're like, nope, we're there, you're covered 100%. That's the whole reason people buy insurance, right? And any of those mistakes that cause, there to be a lapse in coverage, or, for the claim to get denied, that's the kind of stuff that no aircraft owner wants to go through. But you don't know that until it actually happens.
That must be a good feeling when, you write the policy, obviously you get the premium, you get a commission, like, that's a great feeling. But, it's yucky when someone calls you and says, hey, Matt, I had a claim and here's what's going on. But it must be a really cool feeling after that call when you go back to the policy and you take a look and be like, yeah, you are covered, because you did your job. You can go back to the owner and say, hey, listen, look, I did my job, and yes, you are covered, and get them, what they deserve in that time of an accident. That must be kind of a cool feeling.
It is. And it's like, insurance is a scam until you need it, until it pays, for your $1.2 million brand new Cirrus SR22, right? Because you had an accident. And a lot of accidents, they're not avoidable. Like some, a good majority are, but some accidents, like, you couldn't have avoided that flock of geese. Like, there's a lot that happens that's outside of your control. And so, if you don't have an insurance policy just in case something like that happens, it's never, it's an ego hit, of course, whenever you ground loop it or something, you're feeling bad. I should have landed that better. I should have done different. And it's like a double whammy when you go and you're like, and now I also don't have insurance coverage. Like you feel devastated. That's not something we want, And so one of the things we do at BWI specifically, so we have about 150 to 170 airplane crashes or claims a year. So about one every other day is reported to us by our customers. And most of these are like, prop strike, ground loop, hangar rash, right? These are not all fatalities. And the thing we do is, because we know how important insurance is, we want to be there on the other side, especially, like, that's the whole reason of insurance. What we do is we have a review process that the agent has to go through before they can activate a policy. It's called a bind review. It's like a step-by-step process, verifies everything, the name, pilots, open pilot work, like everything on our side. And then after we bound the policy, there's a separate third party we review. Our admin team does it, called the policy review. And again, it's a third party set of eyes reviewing the policy, matches the quote, matches our system, line by line by line, all the way down to make sure it's perfect. Because, like I said, when we do have people every other day, somebody turns a loss into us, and we've never, had somebody where we're like, there's no coverage, right? That's not a position we will ever want to be in.
That's huge. Yeah. I don't. Well, let's talk about this then. What does the claim status actually look like from a broker's perspective? So, just walking somebody through, like, what is the claim status? Is it pretty much like, a Geico claim where I just go on my app and I click on it, or how does that kind of work? And
yeah.
Like, what is the claims, like, reporting the claim, but then, like, what's the average on, like, how long it takes for it to get worked out? Do they just send a check? Do they bring anybody out to confirm, like, what's going on? Yeah, I'm kind of curious. I think it's a little bit different than like a car or a home or an auto claim.
Right. Yeah, I'd be happy to walk through that. So a couple of things. So first of all, you have an accident, and a lot of times the aircraft's at the end of the runway, and now what do we do? Right. And the steps is, number one, of course, passenger security and safety first. Take care of the passengers, make sure medically, that's always the first priority, first concern. Get everybody out of the airplane, get them safe, get them off the runway. The second step, this is before you even talk to me or your insurance broker. The second step is documentation. So if you can take pictures of the accident, the wreckage, the aircraft, any pictures, anything like that, that's step number 2. And then the third step after those two is to get your broker involved and let them know. And so there's a lot of different ways. You can call us, you can go online and submit a claim report. And we have a process where this is monitored 24/7, 365. So you're going to get a response from us no matter what time you submit it, holidays, weekends, all that stuff. When we get the response, the first thing is we want to collect as much data. What happened? Who was flying? Time of day? What is the damage? What is the estimate? Do we think it's just a bent rudder? Or do we need to rebuild the engine? Was it a prop strike? We want to know, like, as much information as we can. The minimum's just like an accident happened, phone number, tail number, somebody to contact, somebody for us to get back to. After we collect this data, we don't turn it into the insurance company right away. We look at the data, and we look at the accident, and we pull up your file and your policy and your quote, and we're going to do a quick 5-minute review. So we're going to look at the whole situation. This is where our expertise is as your aviation insurance risk manager. This is where the expertise really comes in. So we're going to look at your file, and we're going to say, okay, what do we think, the severity of the damages? What do we just ballpark estimate? How much is it going to cost to repair the aircraft? And then we're going to look at your file, and we're going to come back if we can, and we're going to advise you whether to proceed or not. It's not an automatic thing that every claim gets turned in. It's, hey, this is, some hangar rash. It might cost you $3,000 to $5,000 to repair this if our customer paid for it on his own, but then they're not going to have a claim on their record. and they're turning, let's say they're 68, they're turning 70 in 2 years with a claim on their record, they won't, be able to get insurance for that. And so it's probably worth, like, it's a judgment call. It's us advising. If one of our customers wants to turn a claim in, 100% we'll turn it in. But this is our opportunity to advise our customers, hey, this is the best course. This is what we've seen happen in a similar situation when you turn a claim in. Here's how it plays out. And we might get told, hey, I just can't afford that. We got to turn it in. Great, we'll turn the claim in. And that's when we talk to the insurance company. We turn the claim in, and we report it. Once they get the report, they turn it over to an adjuster, and the adjuster, like, once we turn it to the company turns it to hands it to an adjuster, and then the adjuster gets in contact with the aircraft owner, and they start working through the whole claims process. Right? Send me a copy of your logbook. Send me a copy of the picture of the aircraft, the accident, the incident, whatever. Usually they're going to ask, do they have a repair shop in mind that is local that can start getting estimates? Want to get estimates of the repair. The adjuster's job is to analyze the situation. And sometimes they will go out to accident sites and look at aircraft. They can fly around and get to accident sites depending on severity and everything that happened. But their job is to work with the aircraft owner and get the aircraft owner whole again. And if the aircraft can be repaired, let's get it repaired. If it can't be repaired, how can we get that check out to them, as soon as possible? So all the communication, once we turn into the insurance company, happens between the aircraft owner and the insurance company's adjuster. And if there are any issues between the two of them, our customers can always reach out to us, and we can get involved. We can talk to the insurance company and get involved as well.
That's huge. No, I appreciate that, because just giving brokers an overview of what the claims process looks like, I think is important for them to know and to realize that, like you said, having a insurance broker on their side can help save them from inflated premiums or difficulty getting coverage in the future, or how other people have handled it. That's really key. I know we're kind of running out of time a little bit, but I'd love to just kind of get into the brokerage side as far as E&O insurance, or what kind of coverage you think jet brokers need to protect themselves in this wild west that we call private aviation.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd love to break that down. So a couple points here. There's kind of three main coverages in aircraft insurance, just so everybody knows. Number one, whole coverage, right? This is physical damage to the aircraft. Usually aircraft insurance, different than car insurance. It's written on agreed value, right? Car insurance is like depreciation and all that. Aircraft insurance is like, my Cirrus is worth 1.2 million. It's insured for that. If there's a total loss, here's a check for 1.2 million, less any deductibles, right? So number one, whole coverage, different than auto insurance. Aircraft insurance is agreed value. Second, coverage, liability coverage, right? This protects the aircraft owner from bodily injury, property damage that is caused as a result of the operation of the aircraft, right? So passengers, people on the ground, damage to other aircraft, etc. And this is typically offered, depending on the aircraft, for your single engine land aircraft, $1 million is per occurrence is the typical coverage limit here. And that's limited to 100,000 per passenger. And of course, turbines, jets, all that, you can go up to 10, 50, 100 million in liability coverage. So the second coverage is liability. And then the third is errors and omission. This is more, so we're talking about errors and omissions coverage for brokers, management companies, and Part 135 operators. And so errors and omissions, and when you think about it, like writ large, it covers professional mistakes, right? So like you give incorrect advice, or you missed a deadline and it caused financial loss. So when you're advising, your aircraft buyers, or you're managing their aircraft, and if you make a paperwork or regulatory mistake, E&O protects you professionally, right? And that's what E&O coverage, in a nutshell does. And, I definitely recommend it for aircraft brokers.
And is that the same coverage? So if I get E&O and someone comes to my office and they slip and fall, in the hangar at my office. Like, does the E&O cover that as well?
No, that's premises liability. That's a separate coverage.
So as a broker, if I have an office, I would need other coverages for that sort of a thing when I'm talking to people. Or what if I go to a pre-buy and I try to open the door and I kind of break the door doing a showing?
Yeah. So let me break down the three different situations. So
oh wow, okay. Sorry, I didn't do that.
No, because I'm thinking like risk manager, like hang on a second, I gotta, we want to make sure. So the first one is, let's talk about slip and fall coverage, right? Premises liability. So if you occupy an office, right, as soon as you rent that office and you sign the application or whatever it is to rent an office space, the landlord's going to require you usually to have premises liability. So that's a general business coverage for anybody in the office, slips and falls. Pertains to aircraft brokers, everybody. The next one is E&O coverage for aircraft brokers. 100% you should have this if you are acting in a professional capacity, if you're representing yourself as a professional, an aircraft professional. That connotation is going to come with the liability of making mistakes, and people are going to come after you if you don't have that E&O coverage. And you do make a mistake. We're all human. We all make mistakes. It's gonna bite hard. It's gonna hurt. So those are the first two. The third is, you're walking around and you hit your head on an aircraft or a propeller or a wing or something. And there's a couple different ways to look at that. So the primary coverage on this is whoever owns the aircraft. That's whose insurance policy this is going. It's gonna be a liability and whole insurance policy based on whoever owns the aircraft, right? So if you're in the middle of a transaction, you have a buyer and a seller. The seller probably insures the aircraft up until you sign the deal and the buyer becomes the aircraft owner. But up until that point, it's going to go on the seller's insurance policy.
So if I'm showing the aircraft to a potential buyer, and by my opening the door, and I break a mechanism on the door, now the guy's got to pay $10,000 to fix the door.
Yeah,
obviously, I know that first is going to be paid for by his aircraft's insurance for the hull, like that piece of it. It can go through there. But I imagine they're going to subrogate and try to go after me for having been the person responsible for breaking the door. No.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, they could litigate, subrogate against whoever they want to.
Sure. Is there coverage for me as a broker if I break somebody's plane? I guess is my question.
Not under errors and emissions insurance.
Right. Is there any insurance that would cover if I break someone's airplane?
Yeah. But it's always going to be, the primary is always going to be, the whoever owns the aircraft.
Sure. Okay. I get that. Okay. Gotcha. Can anybody get this E&O coverage that we're talking about here? Do you need to be an established broker or working with a brokerage? Like if I just am starting, I found some random guy on YouTube that says he can, pull back the curtain and help him buy and sell private jets, no experience without, to get started. Can I just go to you, Matt, and you hook me up with some E&O insurance? How's it work?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So E&O insurance, as much as I recommend it, it's not for everyone. It's specifically designed for if you're providing a professional service or advice, right? So it's not for aircraft brokers, 100%, but for, it doesn't apply to everyone. If you want to get an E&O insurance policy, you typically need to be licensed, right? So you're a licensed broker, you're a licensed dealer, you're an advisor, or you're a charter company, or you're an aircraft manager, or some type of aviation consultant. Basically, like you're in a role where you make professional decisions and you give professional advice. And if you make a mistake, it could financially harm somebody else. And so when you go to apply for E&O insurance, the insurance company is going to ask questions, on their application. They're going to want to know what your experience is. Are you, is this your first transaction? Have you been doing this for 5 years, 10 years? What is your experience? What is your history of doing this? They're going to want to know what services you're offering, right? And they're going to want to look at if you have contracts or disclaimers or good risk controls in place. So what are your, if you're an aircraft broker, what are your risk controls as you manage that transaction, right? Do you have, what contracts do you have? Do you have, disclaimers on your email, all that fun stuff. You don't have to be in business like 10 years to get a good E&O policy. They just want to understand your business, understand your history, and look at your, your risk controls.
Okay. Okay. So my disclaimers on my emails, do they actually help me?
They help, but they're not bulletproof. So, like if you, in your email, if you add in like, this is not legal advice, you're not an attorney, always
Right.
consult with an attorney or something. What it does is it helps us set expectations for your customers. And it does provide a little context if something goes sideways, but it doesn't, like, those disclaimers don't eliminate your liability, right? Especially if the client is relying on your advice and suffers a financial loss. If you gave them guidance that directly influenced their decision, like how to title an aircraft, how to structure ownership, whether it meets some FAA requirement, etc., and that guidance is wrong, you could still be liable whether or not you have the disclaimer. That makes sense. You still there, Tom?
Sorry, did I lose? I thought I lost you for a second. Okay, so good. The emails do help. I'm glad to hear that. Well, hey, Matt, final piece of advice for aspiring brokers and insurance, or do you just want to shout out your website, tell us what you're up to, and how people can find out more about you?
Yeah, final piece of advice is kind of like we talked about in the beginning, find an insurance professional, and specifically an aviation insurance professional that you get along great with, that you can trust, and just work with one broker, right? Don't get multiple brokers involved. Find somebody you can trust. And, when you're acting as an aircraft broker, you're giving professional advice, and you want to back that up with good working relationships on the insurance side and on the financing side, et cetera, et cetera. That's my one piece of advice. Find somebody you can trust. And that's all I got.
That's awesome, man. We'll definitely connect with Matt. He is somebody that you can trust. Like I said, Jackie's an amazing member of his team. And anytime anybody asks me about aircraft insurance, actually, she's so good that I lost the listing because of her. And it was a good thing, because he was like, if my insurance goes up, I'm going to list it. You can sell it. If my insurance, doesn't, then I still want the plane. And we got her involved. I think she ended up saving the guy like $1,100 or something like that. So he kept the plane, but that made us feel good too, because, we're not in this to pull, steal someone's airplane from them and make them sell it when they don't want to. We want people to be involved in aviation, and it's a great testament to your team and the character of your team that, they want what's best for the client at the end of the day. So you definitely have a great team. I hope more people will check that out.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Tom.